Today, we're so excited to welcome Samara Kasai to the show. They're a non-binary writer, intuitive counselor, and trauma-informed coach who helps people rethink what it means to love their lives instead of just surviving them. Through their work at Kasai Thrive, Samara blends deep emotional insight, nervous system awareness, and anti-oppression values to help folks move past burnout, reclaim creative energy, and live with intention and presence. Their perspective feels especially urgent for people who've spent years hustling, numbing, or holding themselves together on instinct rather than joy. Welcome, Samara. So I actually have been wanting to have you on the pod for a while because one of my closest friends that I grew up with is Leah Vandervelt, and you were on her Cosmic Style pod. And I was like, we're doing our Queer Unseen podcast, and I would really like you to introduce me to this person. So I loved that episode, and I am so excited to have you on tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It was so sweet to hear from any one of Leah's friends, and I'm really also glad to hear that the episode meant something to you.
Oh, it was so good. But let's start. Why don't you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Samara Kasai, and I am a trauma-informed manifestation coach. And I've been doing this work for about 6 years now, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, that's who I am and what I do.
Cool. So why don't you tell us in your own words, what is manifestation for people who don't quite know?
Yes. Okay. This is a question that comes up all the time, as you can imagine. And it really does mean different things to different people. But when I think about it, what it means to me and what I understand myself to be doing with my clients is helping them co-create with the divine to bring things to fruition that maybe would feel impossible otherwise, usually due to like issues, like systemic issues or issues with their self-image because of like trauma that they've experienced or things like that, but really like helping them find a pathway to bring their vision to life, even if for one reason or another it seems impossible.
Okay, what drew you to this kind of work?
Doing it myself, honestly, I had a really tumultuous relationship with religion growing up and had always felt really spiritual and like connected to divinity, but never felt like I had a safe container to explore that. And when I first came across tarot and really like started digging into tarot, one of my favorite tarot readers was actually just like interested in manifestation, would talk to me about manifestation. And I didn't really fully understand what it was, but I was like, this feels good because it feels like I can have a relationship with the divine and can talk to the divine about my desires and my fears and all these things. And it felt almost like a container for prayer at the time. And that was something that felt super nourishing to me and gave me that chance to explore my spirituality. And I started just kind of like applying what she shared. And at the time I was applying to grad school back in 2019. And so I started applying what she shared to my grad school application process. And I just, as a person who is like incredibly anxious and very perfectionist, I just remember feeling like the whole thing was being held by something bigger than me. And that was really when I started to feel like manifestation would be a regular part of my practice.
Okay, I love that because especially I feel like for queer people, religion can feel organized religion, especially, it can feel really alienating. But at the same time, it's like, well, where do we find that, whether you want to call it faith or spirituality? Like, where do we go for that if not to religion? It doesn't always feel like there's a direction to go. And so I love that answer, actually, manifestation.
I mean, it definitely looks different for different people, but that was definitely the path for me of like wanting to have some kind of spiritual connection, not knowing how to set that up for myself. And then this just happened to be the thing that like clicked for me where it felt like I could have my own relationship with the divine again.
Do you feel like manifestation works differently for queer people, or perhaps that queer people are more drawn to manifestation? We were talking about this before the episode, and I feel like we a little bit think that queer people are drawn more towards this energy, right? What do you think?
I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are, because now I'm kind of in a bubble where I am like surrounded by queer people talking about manifestation all the time. And I don't have a way to like assess that against like, is this happening elsewhere? Is this just like the thing that I've built for myself? But I would love to hear like what y'all were talking about and what your thoughts were.
I mean, the way I was thinking about it was, I don't know, queer people, we kind of have to live in a little bit of a fantasy land to survive, right? Yeah. Like there's this normal world that's happening for everybody else. And then this is the part of the world that we're going through. Mm-hmm. And so there is like this level of just being very open-minded. I'm super curious, one, like the religious part of it, because I know a lot of queer people who have this subset of religion growing up, and then they feel very resistant to that because it's not fitting our lens and our ideals. And there's this tension there. But even my wife, she grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school. And, you know, in our 30s when we lived in D.C., we joined a UU church because it was very politically driven. The sermons were very like open to all religions. It wasn't any one point of view. It was more like a political protest, which we loved. But she really missed that like religious collective energy of having all of these people gather in a place. So I'm curious about like your religious part of growing up and how that led to what manifestation looks like for you.
Ooh, okay. This is a fascinating question, and honestly, not one that I think I have tried to answer before. So I'm just gonna like see what comes up. But in terms of growing up, I grew up very, very religious. I grew up in New York, but my mother was born in Virginia. And so we were Southern Baptists, and we went to a church where the pastor was also from Virginia. So it was kind of like a little subset of Southern Baptist people in New York. And we were there like every week, sometimes multiple times a week. Like that was like, you know, my mom's best friends were there. And it was very much like a social, cultural, and spiritual environment all rolled into one. And I remember when I was growing up, like I said, I felt very connected spiritually. Like I really loved knowing that I could seek out spiritual support when I was nervous or anxious. I grew up with a lot of mental health issues, depression, all kinds of things, and feeling like I had some kind of like container that was holding me, that loved me, that was like looking out for me. Like that was very important to me growing up. And honestly, my frustrations with religion, they started around the time when I was like coming out to myself, I guess, which was in like middle school. But I think there were a lot of layers to it because I was also really frustrated with like Christianity and colonialism. And that was the main thing that when I started to really like put it together that Christianity was like so entrenched into colonialism, that was the thing where I was like, actually, this makes no sense. Like, why are we doing this? And it was very hard for me to reconcile the colonial aspects of Christianity with like the spiritual connection that I had felt. And so that was really my main thing. And then honestly, the church that I grew up in was not like explicitly homophobic, but it was kind of like I almost like don't ask, don't tell, I guess. Like it just was not brought up. There was no like preaching against it, but it was just not spoken about at all. So I never felt out of place in that way necessarily, but I was just very frustrated with the relationship between Christianity and colonialism. And it wasn't really until I went to college and was like searching for like churches in Boston. I went to college in Boston, searching for churches in Boston and trying to like figure out for myself like what church would look like or if I would go to church at all. That was when I really ran into the homophobia in church very explicitly.
Shocking, Boston.
There is now a lesbian bar on Boylston. That would not have happened when I was, because I also went to school in Boston, and that's crazy. So
wow. Okay, well that's really good.
Progress.
I love that for us.
Right.
But yeah, so that was when I ran into the homophobia and like all the like untangling of my relationship with Christianity had already kind of started by the time the homophobia layer came in, I guess, or like the anti-queer layer came in. And so there was this period where I was just feeling really alienated and like kind of wondering if I had kind of built my relationship with God up in my head, but it wasn't real, if that makes sense. Like if it was like a one-sided thing where I was just like hoping that something was there, but really if there was something there, then it like didn't like or respect me or love me or any of that. And like that was one of the more heartbreaking seasons of my life. And as I came out of college and into my first job, I actually had my first job in DC, funnily enough. Into my first job, I didn't really have any kind of container where I was relating to the divine at all until I stumbled into tarot randomly, maybe not so randomly. And that was kind of how we found our way into manifestation. So it doesn't feel very linear unless I actively think about it. And I'm kind of grateful for that question for helping me put it all together.
Can I ask you about tarot?
Yeah.
So I have a tarot set and, I read the notes on the side, like, what does this mean and what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
I actually did it last night and I wasn't particularly enthused by the cards I was getting based on my question. Isn't it just chance? Isn't it just random? Right?
So when I was briefly a tarot teacher, and what I would always tell people was that I always think about it like an ink blot test. Like if you show someone an ink blot, they're going to see whatever they need to see. And you can show everyone the same ink blot and they will all see whatever they need to see. And so I never really used those books because somehow, and I'm sure someone said this to me and I just absorbed it. But I was always seeing this as like an ink blot. So I would literally look at the card and notice like, okay, what are these colors reminding me of? What is the way this person is standing reminding me of? Like, okay, this person is inside, this other person is outside. And I would just journal out like everything about the card that somehow stood out to me until I started making associations with my own life.
Got it.
There you go.
That's interesting. So it's more interpretation.
It's all interpretation.
But it's objective, right? Like it's in your point of view and you're going to find what you want out of it based on what you are seeing and feeling at the time.
But isn't that with everything you're ever going to do to try to like light your path or show you the way?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is totally subjective. And I think that's, in my eyes, I'm like, that's kind of the point. Like, it's like you getting in touch with yourself to figure out whatever it is that you need to know in that moment. And maybe that's because I kind of fell into tarot when I was still on my hiatus from spirituality. So I was like, let me make sense of this through the lens more of psychology, I guess. But that's still the way that I read tarot now. It's just like, what does this remind me of? And how does that feel pertinent to whatever situation I'm reading about?
Very cool.
And I feel like it's kind of a take what you need and skip what you don't kind of situation too, right?
That sounds like Christianity too.
Well, okay, so something else I really loved from, I'm going to stop talking about Cosmic Style, but I love that pod, and I love Leah. You talked about moving through the world with a justice lens, and I really liked that conversation, and I would like to talk about what you mean by that, and how do we have those conversations?
Okay, wait, what are the conversations when you say, how do we have those conversations?
Okay, so moving through the world with a justice lens, for one example. Of course, I'm often talking about the queer community, right? So, for instance, I am a queer person and I'm a woman, but I can also pass and I'm also a white person. So my experiences of justice and my lens around that are certainly different from people from other walks of life, right? So to have conversations about how do we live our lives through a lens of justice and how do we talk about that in a way that doesn't feel weird or cheap or awkward, I guess, is what is I'm asking you in your work. How do you approach that subject?
Okay. I really like this question. I'm going to do my best with it. I think there's like so many places that it could go. But if I'm looking at it through the lens of my work, a lot of the times with clients, I will have them do a lot of work on like understanding their own worldview for themselves and defining a mission for themselves. Like, what is your personal mission statement? What matters to you? And I'll give them a lot of questions of, the world would be a better place if everyone got to blank, or if no one had to blank. And we'll just explore what is their version of the most just world. And then we'll start to look at what's their theory of change. Like, what do they believe is missing from keeping us? What do they believe is keeping us from getting there? Or what do they believe is required in order for us to get to that place? And like, that is kind of an anchor for helping people explore their own version of justice, and then helping them define their own path for like, how can I personally assert myself to bring my version of justice forward? And what I often realize is that a lot of people's version of justice for themselves is really similar to our own mainstream, I guess, version of like, this is what we should all be working for in society from that like moralistic sense. But it's also flavored by their own lived experiences, as all of our versions of justice are. And it's really nice to see how people can carve out their own little puzzle piece of like, this is what I feel like I can uniquely contribute based on the unique experiences and wisdom and knowledge and like the combination of all the things that make me who I am. And I really love helping people kind of find that and like work in that.
What kind of people are generally drawn to you? What kind of clients do you usually work with? And what is it they're usually seeking when they come to you?
Ooh, these are good questions.
Thank you.
Okay. So at this moment, actually, all of my clients are queer. I think that might have always been true. I don't want to leave anyone out, though, so I'm not going to say that. But generally,
we often say on this podcast, like, everyone's invited, but queer people are VIP.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way to say it.
That's perfect.
That's so good. A lot of like AFAB people, which is not, I'm always like, should I be doing more for like AMAB people? But then, But I don't know. Again, nothing is black or white, because I can always think of like the handful of AMAB people that have been my clients, but like mostly been AMAB people, millennials. And a lot of them are looking to merge their career into something that is more in line with their version of justice. And the manifestation usually comes in because that's when people start to feel like this is impossible for systemic reasons, or impossible for whatever list of personal reasons they have, or usually combinations. And so we'll use the manifestation work to help them bring about these changes that usually they want to see in their career. More recently, I've been also having people come because they want to create changes in their close relationships, like their dynamics with their parents. I've done a lot of healing on my dynamic with my parents, and I think that has inspired people. And so that's kind of a new thing that's emerging now, but more steadily, it's been people wanting their career to line up with their version of justice.
Interesting.
Are you finding like today's world as we know it? I mean, the last, how many weeks are we in? 2.5?
2.5.
Almost
2.5.
Almost 3 weeks in 2026, right? And it, when you zoom out, you're like, how can it be possible this much has happened in this short a time? Not only having this very specific conflict of what the word justice means, because I think a lot of people are looking at what's happening in the world now and having like some semblance of history, being like, oh shit, maybe I got that wrong. Mm-hmm. I think like that word justice in this moment in time is particularly interesting. And I also think it's interesting that you work with people who are trying to heal this relationship with their parents. I'm going through one of those right now where I didn't talk to my dad for 6 years, and out of the blue, he texted me around Christmas like some crazy thing. And it's like, I've done my healing and I've gone through that process. Meanwhile, the people that we're healing from have not gone through that work. Mm-hmm. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, like your experience with both the folks that you're working with, the healing journey with their parents and how that works, but also your point of view on where we stand today, again, almost 3 weeks into the year, and the craziness and the level of how do we define justice.
Okay. Starting with where we're at, I guess, broadly, and then the parent stuff might flow from there, kind of. But starting with where we're at, I really think that one of the things I'm noticing more than ever, actually since the election, but as things escalate more and more and more, is how important it is for people to define justice for themselves and to take it upon themselves to really do the work of whatever they believe is required to bring that to life. And I think one of the disservices that we have done ourselves is delegating that to government or delegating that to external people, but kind of deciding that there are some people who focus on this and some people who don't. And I think that hurts us because ultimately, if we don't, and what I'm realizing is like, if we don't actively create what we want to see in the world, we really can't like rely on the forces that be to create it on our behalf. And I think in some ways that can be discouraging, but the way that I have really tried to anchor into it for myself, really so that I can help my clients, is to remember that as we spend time really focusing on this and as we make those shifts, especially if we're really focusing on shifting our careers towards that, it will happen more and more because career tends to be the place where people feel the most stuck and they don't have agency, or all the choices that they've made in the past have kind of put them in a box of like what's available to them now. And so the more people can start to think outside of those boxes, I think the more general liberation we will all feel. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. And I'm happy to talk about any of that. In terms of the parent stuff, what I have noticed with a lot of people and their parents, and this was true with me, is that, I mean, depending on everyone's situation being different, but if the main thing is due to generational differences, parents have different worldviews and sets of beliefs and, want to impose those onto their children because they think that's the responsible thing to do or whatever it might be. One of the things that has really helped me a lot is reminding myself that my parents get to believe whatever they believe, and I get to relate to them in whatever way I feel is appropriate, but we don't have to agree on literally anything except maybe just a basic definition of mutual respect. Like, as long as we have mutual human respect for each other and we want to see each other healthy and, we care about the well-being of each other, we're not wishing each other harm, then a lot of my relationship with my parents has turned into relating on like our shared experiences and like wanting to preserve the memories that we have amongst ourselves. And this really came to terms for me as most of my grandparents have passed away at this point. And I spent a lot of my childhood with my grandparents. And so wanting to really focus on, what are the things about my family that only my parents know? And at some point my parents won't be here. And I want to make sure that I know these things, and getting like recipes or like hearing stories, especially with my family, like, tell me about being bused to a white school when you were a kid. I want to know what that was like, especially as people are actively trying to erase those narratives in the broader collective. I want those for myself, and I want to know that I have them. And so that's like the points of connection that I found with my parents, is like knowing that there are things that only they can give me that I really want, and things that only I can give them in some cases that are meaningful, and not making it mean that we have to agree on every little facet of our worldview,
I love this answer. This is something that I'm just struggling with in my life when I think about my history with people and family and people I loved. But now I'm in a same-sex marriage and I'm raising children, and just my values, when they don't align, and it's like, okay, so how much of our shared history is still worth kind of moving on to the future, right? And what does that feel like? And who are the people that we choose to do that with? And again, I'm someone who's super lucky because my parents, my siblings, we all are pretty aligned in our values. And so I think about people who don't have that in their very close family, and I realize that I'm very, very fortunate, and it's okay to start thinking about maybe the other people who don't. We used to fit and now we don't, and it's okay to have love for the past and to also move forward. Also, I have to mention that I wrote my first college research paper about busing in Boston. And nobody knows what that is. I read a short story with my students every semester, and busing is part of the short story. And they're like, what is this? And I have to explain it to them because the kids don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know.
That like really hurts.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'm like, no, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that you're carrying that on.
I think it's awesome that you are able to kind of step out of yourself to be able to find those connections with family that may have different beliefs. And I thought it was interesting the way you mentioned, like, we have a shared respect for each other. And for me, I've always struggled with that because for my father and some other folks that we know, and maybe today, people that we just met, where it's like, I voted a certain way and I believe this thing about let's just blanket the queer community as this terrible, you guys are trans and you're socialists and you're trying, well, we are, but trying to take over the world, right? All of this.
Definitely trying to take over.
It was like all of these are true.
Right?
Okay.
The gay agenda, all the things. But then they look at the person they know and they're like, well, you're not them. And I'm like, no, I am them. I am them. And if you vote against them, you're voting against me and trying to create that connection. And I say this because we have friends who are constantly like, listen, we just need to continue the conversation. We need to talk to people who have differences. We need to keep doing this. And part of me is like, girl, I'm tired. I am tired of having this conversation. When it comes to basic morality and human rights, that's not something I need to argue for. That is a shared understanding in my point of view. But I just think it's really great that you've figured out how to maintain your, and I'm assuming this, but maintain your sanity to a certain degree, trying to find that shared respect with people, especially your family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with them, I always remember that at the core, I genuinely love them and want them to be safe and healthy. And I know that they want me to be safe and healthy and that they would never. Yeah. And it's hard because it's like they do have to. There is the cognitive dissonance of, okay, you don't want anything harmful to happen to me. But then if you're voting in such a way that perpetuates harm that could eventually trickle out to me, and even if it doesn't, the feelings that you have towards me and wanting me to be safe should theoretically extend outwards. And they don't.
Why don't they? This is why we've stopped having those. We were like, actually, instead of having those conversations, we're just going to make a podcast for the queers. That's what we're going to do.
We're just going to create our own bubble, our own society.
I like the bubble. I really enjoy my little bubble.
Hey, you know what? When you first asked the questions, though, when you were the first couple of questions you ask your clients, I can't remember how you phrase it, but basically, like, what is missing in the world? How do we make it better?
The world would be a better place if everyone got to blah, blah, blah.
I immediately thought matriarchy. If we could just get rid of, that was my instant thought. So that's my point of view. I think it'll fix a lot of things. Yeah. Men are far too emotional.
Oh, so much so it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, I do think everyone should ask themselves those questions, though, and then actually ask, like, what do they think is required, and what's a piece of that they feel they can do. Because I think that if that happens at scale, like, that's kind of my, like, the world would be a better place if everyone was asking themselves these questions and then doing their part, doing what they feel like is their part.
That's so good. And that's something especially, and I feel like there's a reason therapy culture and manifestation and all that's become so big, especially maybe for millennials, because we just want someone to tell us what to do. How do we make it better? And so when you can break it down to ask yourself this question, and then once you can answer that, let's get to the next question. Yes, like, that is it. Like, what could you do to make things a little better? What would it take? Those lead to immediate change when you actually sit with yourself for a moment and you think about those. So great job. You're doing great at your work.
Thank you.
And I think the part of it that's important is that it institutes a level of action on yourself, right? You're not looking at the world to solve your problems, and you're not like, I want to manifest a yacht and $300 million like that. Yeah. No, we're talking about what you can create and take action on in your own worldview. So that's really cool.
I first started working through the counseling and mental health space. And I was working in this queer drop-in counseling center. And a lot of what I learned through that work was just like how important it is for people to feel connected to agency, even if they're in situations where choices are being made on their behalf and they're living in consequences of other people's decision making all the time. It's teaching people how to access their agency and then not just like theoretically access it, but actually take steps and live in the benefits of their own decisions. That is so, so huge. And that's definitely something that I've carried with me into my current work.
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so
Queer Quickies.
our last section is kind of a quick fire, rapid answer. Don't think too hard about it. It's basically, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Cool.
Okay. First celebrity crush.
Oh my God. Okay. My subconscious just gave me Selena Gomez, which I didn't even
okay.
but I'll take it.
Okay. I love
That
that.
suddenly feels so true.
That felt very fast, too. I love this. Usually people have to think about it. Good
No,
for
I love
you.
that.
Okay. What is the first queer bar you ever went to?
Oh, Machine, actually.
Tell us about Machine.
What's Machine?
Machine
Where is it?
is in Boston. Is it not in Boston? Am I thinking of something other than
I went to Emerson College. We were on Boylston Street. I definitely went to Machine with like my gay friends because I wasn't gay.
There was
went as
somewhere
Ellen.
I went. It was like a Tuesday night. It was the gay night. And I think it was called Avalon.
Yeah. Avalon.
Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah.
That was by Fenway,
Yeah.
I believe.
Okay. What is one stereotype about queer people that you secretly love?
That we're all really good at fashion because I wish that was true.
I wear old navy t-shirts and jeans, and I am not.
Everything I own came from Old Navy. And I just like, I wish that we were all just like really fashionable by osmosis.
Okay, well, from the neck up, you look very fashionable to me.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. What is your queer superpower?
Reading people's minds.
Ooh.
Oh, damn. Good thing you're not in person. Don't want to get in here. What makes you go from 0 to unhinged?
Oh, honestly, I don't know. What's coming up is like nothing, but there's just been so much nervous system regulation throughout my life.
Yes.
A lot would have to happen. for
Oh,
me to-
wow. Self-control. What is
I
that
love this.
like?
Okay. Great. Great. I love that for you because it doesn't take a lot for us to go.
No.
Very
We're
triggering.
psychopaths, but
Or crazy. Okay. And we'll see if you've watched a certain show that is in the headlines of the queer populace right now, but your best queer movie or show.
Well, Heated Rivalry, I have to say.
There it
sorry,
is.
I can't
There it is.
I'm sorry. It's so good. I knew I was going to love it, and I don't care that I'm such a cliche because I love it.
No, I feel like it's honestly better than a lot of queer TV that has come out.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Heated Rivalry will bring us all together as a society.
I mean,
Guys, all the women in sports are out.
That's true.
high percentage. I just can't get over the gay lighting they had in the show. Like all of the
Oh my
hotels
God.
had gay lighting. I'm like, this is
Why was
not
the gym
real.
so dark?
I just can't get over it.
Everything I see, I question, and like my wife gets so mad at me because I'm always like pointing out all the plot holes. But with this, I'm like, makes sense. Love it. Perfect. Perfectly done. Well executed. No notes.
Love it.
Oh my goodness.
Tell people how to find you.
Well, if you are determined to find me, I am Samara Kasai on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube. So you can find me there. And then I will send you guys, I have a free 2-hour class on what to do while you're waiting for your manifestations, because that is the biggest question that I get. And so I just kind of spent a lot of time explaining that to people, and people can watch that for free. So I will send you that.
Yes.
And I'm my name on every social media. But
No.
yeah, this
Wah,
was
wah.
wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Thank you
being
for
here.
joining.
Have a great night. Thank you so much, Samara, for joining us tonight on Unseen. We really enjoyed chatting about Boston gay bars, self-agency, and why you can reject religion and still be spiritual. Thanks for listening.